Good evening from our headquarters in Kyiv. This is the Sunday show at Hromadske International, the only English-speaking prime-time show explaining Eastern European geopolitical storm, and I'm Natalia Humenyuk. And of course, the whole world is watching, those who are interested in Ukraine, the Ukrainian presidential race. Last week, and just recently, we got the final results of the elections, according to the Ukraine Central Election Commission. So Volodymyr Zelenskiy, an actor, a show business person, has got his 30%, almost twice more than the current president Petro Poroshenko. So they are both running in the second round, and the election date for the second round is 21st of April. So Yulia Tymoshenko got her 13%, Yuri Boyko, person representing openly pro-Russian opposition bloc, not running from the opposition bloc, but still from this force, 11%, up to 12%, and Anatoly Hrytsenko, an independent anti-corruption fighter, as he calls himself, up to 7%. But of course, that was not really surprising for the Ukrainians, I should say, at least those who are following. But the world was a bit surprised, and we have with us Katia Mishchenko, who is a Ukrainian publisher and author, just coming from Berlin as well, to discuss, and Melinda Haring, whom we know as an editor of UkraineAlert blog at the Atlantic Council, just coming back from Washington, and Oksana Forostyna, a Ukrainian publisher and intellectual. And with this show, we would like to give you a bit of feeling what is the discussion in Ukraine. Not really trying to kind of copy the discussion we have here in the Ukrainian Facebook. But, okay, so maybe I would just say, of course, there was this later, those who are following will look closer to the whole discussion later with the candidates challenging each other, calling to the debates, taking the blood test. But how would you explain the Ukrainian elections now as a Ukrainian watcher for somebody who is interested? What are you looking at? Melinda?
Okay, so first of all, the final results of round one are not surprising. We knew that Zelensky was going to come out on top, although his points are about 6. So some experts say it's as we expected, but his number is about 5 or 6 points higher than what I had seen. So he did better than we expected. When we look at the map too, it's a very green map, right? Poroshenko took 2 oblasts. Out in the West, and he took the diaspora vote. So Zelensky did, his number is better than we expected, and the number of oblasts he took was very strong as well. Those are the pieces that sort of stick out at me from the first round.
Oksana, how would you read the whole situation?
Well, we still have a democracy here, so we don't know who will run first in the second tour. So it's elections full of surprises still. And I don't mean the results now. I mean the society, because every day brings some very unexpected news, usually unpleasant news for me.
We'll go to that a bit later. Katia?
I would say that we have somehow politics in our agenda again. Politics is back for the society, for media. I mean, not only this conspiracy, like, I don't know, as usual, or some quiet war in news, and we know everything about everybody, but nothing happens. And now we are really in the situation where also we as a society, or the people who will go to the election, can decide something, and can decide something for the future. And I think it's a very productive and interesting situation.
But if you want to step back and say, what does this all mean? Ukrainians went to the polls a week ago, and it was a very clear message. Ukrainians are pissed off, right? They're very angry with the last 5 years. There's a couple of issues that keep coming up over and over again. One is corruption, one is war, but one is unfulfilled promises. So honestly, I think that there were 39 candidates. The West praised the number of choices. Frankly, I think that's a really cheap thing to say. The choices were not very good. Ukrainians have narrowed it down to 2 choices, but it's really a test on Petro Poroshenko. It was a referendum on Petro Poroshenko. But frankly, I think Ukrainians would have voted for Chibirashka. They don't care who the candidate is. Ukrainians are willing to vote for an inexperienced comedian who has ties to Kolomoisky. People are really frustrated that their bottom line hasn't improved. If you have to narrow it down, if you have to pick one issue or 2 issues, it's poverty and unfulfilled promises that I think people are really upset about.
Would you share this also concern, and as well, how do you see the debates?
Well, people may be upset, but I think it's much more complicated than poverty and unfulfilled promises, because people actually people live better now than like 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So it's not poverty itself. I think it's a number of reasons, and one of the reasons that expectations went very high. That's it. It doesn't mean that people actually live worse during these 5 years. Well, but the war, of course. But as we know, war is something that cannot be solved by Ukrainian part only. It's again much more complicated.
I think it is still important who it was. I don't think that it was just a protest against Poroshenko. Of course, it was. But at the same time, when I'm thinking about Volodymyr Zelenskiy or Volodymyr Zelenskiy, it's also a question, an interesting one. He is like a boy next door. He's really clear for the people. He is dressed like us, I would say, and he's friendly, he's open, and he's really horizontal in these political things. His ears are also open. He's ready to cooperate. He's ready to take the agendas, for example, from anti-corruption activists, and to use it in his campaign and to appropriate it. And I think this openness, also the openness of the chances of the politics and the possibility for the people to have a dialogue or some interaction, it is very attractive for Ukrainians today. And I think it's a good sign. It's a good sign about our society.
Some people would say there is a kind of, the jokes of his comedy company are vulgar, that it's coming back from this kind of European path, though he declares this European path. What is your take on that?
I wouldn't agree he's friendly. As for me, he's very aggressive, he's offensive, and besides these jokes, sexist and sometimes anti-Semitic, sometimes Ukrainophobic jokes, I mean, in this campaign, he's quite aggressive. He's actually street mind, I would agree, but it's a kind of aggressive street mind, like a bit like a street gangster. And actually, that's why I'm very much concerned about this appeal. I understand why it's appealing. You know, he recently appeared on the Facebook with a naked torso, like comparing to Poroshenko. And my first idea was, okay, it's Putin. It was like Putin's photo with naked torso. It's the same appeal. It's the same message. So I'm a cool guy.
Would you share that, or?
Oh, I didn't know this video.
Anyway,
it was a photo. It was a photo.
You can make an argument that he's not presidential enough, that he's not serious enough to be the president, right? Yes. Okay, he's played the president, but playing the president is very different than being the real president. He has no foreign policy experience. Ukraine is at war. He's named no serious foreign policy advisors. I think that that's a big red flag. He doesn't know very much about international financial institutions. And Ukraine's economy, it's the first thing that the next president is going to have to do, is negotiate a deal with the IMF. He has good advisors around him. The fact that Daniluk and Ivris are advising him is a good thing, but there are other circles around him too that make me wonder who's actually going to have his ear. So he has a comedy troupe around him, and they reportedly have the most sway with Zelensky. He also has the old business elites that want his ear. And then the fourth circle around him is the political technologists, and they apparently have his ear as well. He has a reputation as someone who's not trusting, and he's probably going to rely on his comedy troupe and the people he's known for a long time on these big decisions. I've asked around who is Zelensky's top advisor, and I was told Zelensky. So Zelensky relies on himself and his wife, apparently, to make decisions.
Is it much different from the current situation and the current president, who relies strongly on himself?
So Poroshenko relies strongly on himself. I was told that Poroshenko only listens to his father, but he also has a small circle of advisors that he does listen to. But it's true that Poroshenko does come across as out of touch and someone who doesn't listen very well.
I would like also to drag your attention to something which dragged the attention of the whole Ukrainians this week. Fight or challenge when Zelensky was calling Poroshenko to make a debate at the stadium. There was an answer, there was a blood test, but please listen to how it was done.
Звертаюсь до Петра Порошенко. Ви кличете мене на дебати. Мріяли, що я втечу, відморожусь, заховаюсь. Ні, я це не ви у 2014 році. Я приймаю виклик. Ось мої умови. Чекаю на вас тут, на НСК Олімпійській. Дебати відбудуться перед народом України. Усі канали мають право транслювати дебати наживо. Усі журналісти мають право бути присутніми. Кандидати повинні обов'язково пройти медичну експертизу і довести народу, що серед них немає ні алкоголіків, ні наркоманів. Країні потрібен здоровий президент. В знак поваги, як мінімум, до третини громадян України ви повинні публічно сказати, що дебати відбудуться не з маріонеткою Кремля чи Коломойського, не з ватником, не з малоросом, не з бидлом, не з клоуном, а з кандидатом в президенти України Володимиром Зеленським. Даю вам 24 години. Думайте.
Володимире Олександровичу, я радий, що ви, хоч і якось не впевнено, але прийняли запрошення провести дебати. Ми з вами дуже різні. Головна відмінність – стрілки наших геополітичних компасів показують в діаметрально протилежні сторони світу. Моя країна – це сильна європейська Україна, яка ніколи, за жодних обставин і ні перед ким не стане на коліна. І дебати – це не шоу. Виборча кампанія – це подія, яка визначає майбутнє країни і нації на роки і десятиліття вперед. Тут не до жартів. І бути президентом і верховним головнокомандувачем – це не гра, це не бажання сподобатися. Бути президентом і верховним головнокомандувачем – значить нести відповідальність за людей. Нести відповідальність за країну і всередині України, і на міжнародному рівні. І дебати робляться не заради видовища на стадіоні. Дебати – це серйозна дискусія про стратегію розвитку країни, про цінності, про історичний вектор, про пріоритети. Країна не просто обирає, вона довіряє свою долю. Правила дебатів прописані в законі про вибори президента. Почитайте, будь ласка. Вони можуть відбутися на базі суспільного телебачення з трансляцією по всіх телеканалах для десятків мільйонів людей. Такі вже усталені правила. Але стадіон так стадіон. Я чекаю на вас, Володимир Олександрович.
Okay, so that was just two of them. There were way more. Later, Zelensky asked Yulia Tymoshenko to be the moderator of the debate. There was another video from Petro Poroshenko. In the end, it ended in the giving the blood test. There were various discussions in Ukraine. You know, some people say that, wow, that's too low for the presidential candidate. It's too unpresidential. Some people really like it because it's something different. It's politics. It's not like behind door closed deals. So how we read that after the whole week, because we expected in Ukraine a lot of awful things happening, but maybe not what was not the most kind of trickiest. You're coming from Washington. How it was discussed?
So Zelensky is trolling his way to the presidency. That's what we saw in these videos, right? Zelensky's video is slick. It was multiple takes. It had rock and roll. It had a great beat. It showed his back. He comes across as persuasive and articulate. And Poroshenko looks sleepy. He has no energy. He's lecturing and hectoring, and he's telling Zelensky, go read the rules on the debate before we start this. But in general, if you step back, this does not look good for Ukraine, right? It makes Ukraine look silly. The fact that the candidates aren't actually talking to each other and they're issuing, these sort of macho videos. Why don't they just have a debate already? It really backfired for Zelensky. Zelensky miscalculated. He clearly wanted out of the debate. Poroshenko is a better debater. He knows policy, every single which way. Zelensky's new to this, and he's not going to do very well in a debate.
That's kind of discussed because I heard quite a different views. Let's go.
Yeah, I think Zelensky, he's really challenging the representation of power today in Ukraine and the representation or the visuality of politics. And I think first, as a person who is a curator and very fond of arts and etc., I think it's interesting, is the first point. And I think we forget that we don't have only Poroshenko and Zelensky or their advisors, we have also us, the reception of it. And it is also influencing the whole process. And I think it's quite a dynamic process and exchange. And I think all the critiques you are expressing or we are expressing plays also a role in the further steps of the both candidates. And I think it makes the whole story interesting. Someone is quite disappointed and is speaking about Black Mirror things, some reality show stuff, etc. But listen, politics in Ukraine was always a show, but a quite bad show, and with quite bad actors, and many people couldn't really, I think, didn't really share the aesthetics of the power representation. And now I think I don't mean it is good what is happening, but I think this challenge is very important, and we should, as a society, take this challenge and say or formulate what kind of politics we want to see after the election or during this campaign before the second round.
I agree that Zelensky is trolling, but he's not only trolling Poroshenko, he's trolling all of us. Because, for God's sake, we have rules. We have rules that presidential debates should be on Spilna TV. Why we even discuss Tymoshenko as a moderator? Why we even start this discussion? Well, okay, I understand it may be fun, I mean, the whole process, but the country is in stake, and Zelensky is just used the fact that many Ukrainians just don't know the rules. For example, what kind of rules do we have for the debates, and what kind of responsibilities a president has? So it's just basics, and he's actually trolling using this ignorance.
And don't you think he's trolling the really the ignorance, but not the rules? Because nobody was speaking about these rules earlier, and only now we are referring to the rules and to some normality and to some ruled kind of campaign, etc. But we didn't have it earlier, and this is a problem.
I probably would like to say that we talked to the people in Kiev here, and I would claim as well why I encourage all watch Hromadske and Hromadske International, because you know, the discussions are good and great, but as soon as we really get out of this Kyiv studio, we hear that some strategies, maybe they're, you know, stupid, they look strange or something, but they sometimes are working, and there is a response in the end. So, and winner takes it. So I would like that we show this video of the our team going to the. Okay, we just say that they would be like a bit later, but Melinda, you probably would respond.
I just wanted to give an international perspective. I'm an editor and I write titles for a living, right? And almost every single title about Zelensky has the word comedian or a joke or it's not a joke. And it just makes Ukraine look silly. I know editors are trying to be playful, but this isn't helping to build an image of Ukraine as a serious modern country.
Isn't the question of the image and the way you frame it, the whole thing? That was a question I probably recently asked in the way how you build the same argument about the same person. You can't portray anybody as the kind of an oligarch in power and chocolate king.
Yeah, I wanted to say.
And a comedian. You can
king.
make a kind of a game between a chocolate king and a comedian, or between a businessman and experienced politicians, or whatsoever.
Or businessman.
And there I probably would ask, maybe then before we're looking at that, just stay a bit aside of that. Somebody who knows Ukraine well and talking to particularly this foreign audience, saying that maybe there is something that also the editors are missing, because usually it's very easy to laugh at Ukraine instead of looking at the, you know, like in the way how because you're trying with your blog do something more in depth.
Yeah, we're trying to tell, I mean, Ukraine is a really exciting story, right? You guys have had this big breakthrough in 5 years, and now Ukrainians are going to the elections. But I think the bigger issue is that we don't know what Zelensky thinks about anything serious. I mean, his policies have been very, very thin, and it's time for a debate. I guess I'm not a voter, but I'm frustrated that they're issuing videos rather than getting ready for a debate. Like, Poroshenko's right about this. Be a man. Let's do this. Let's go to the stadium. I think having a stadium debate is ridiculous, though. It makes it seem like a circus. But, okay, to give you the opposite argument, maybe more people are interested in the election because, you know, there is sort of a drum roll. I don't think I buy that argument, but that's the opposite view.
I definitely would probably get into that as well, into this discussion, because I also recently had been in Brussels. We're talking to a lot of people and just saying that, like, I usually, and us answering a lot of questions, saying that, like, I'm used in the Ukrainian elections, there would be harassment, there would be, you know, some kind of attacks, even like very militant attacks, there would be fraud and something. So let's have this week where nothing like that happened. Let's see what will happen later. But I would like to get into the other things, because we are discussing maybe I would ask our team to show a different map on how Ukraine soldiers voted and that was pretty surprising for many, because we calculated the data given by the Central Election Commission that overall there were the 80 special polling stations for military personnel. And in country at war, and a country where some people are sometimes accused of being kind of authoritarian, or, you know, meaning like that the elections are not fair. In the polling stations, the military voted this way. There were 13,433 votes for President Poroshenko, 13,325 for Zelensky, where we have some regions in Western Ukraine and in Eastern, close on the front line, which was a lot interesting results. So how we also read that? Maybe you would start.
Yeah, Oksana told already that we don't know how to stop the war. And I think it is a common sense in Ukraine that we don't know how to negotiate with Russia, what Russia wants, and how to stop the war. But at the same time, we all know that we should, and the politicians, our government, we all should empower Ukraine. And a strong Ukraine is a guarantee that the war can be stopped in... I don't know when, but then we have more chances to negotiate and...
But doesn't, when we look at that map, though,
and I think it was the reason, because of course Poroshenko monopolized this army topic, and he is a big defender of Ukraine. He's the biggest patriot in Ukraine, and of course during his presidency our army appeared, etc. But at the same time, this question how we will empower Ukraine and how we will get the stronger, more prosperous Ukraine, it remained open. And I think these hopes are connected with a new face and with a new kind of politician, with Zelensky. And for me it is an explanation of this.
I think you're right. I've been making this argument in Washington that the domestic policy is more important in this election than foreign policy, and the differences on foreign policy are minimal between the two candidates. Yes, Zelensky says he wants a referendum, but broadly, they both support NATO membership, EU membership. They're both going to be tough on Russia. The real differences are on anti-corruption and on the economic side. It's interesting when you look at the difference between the two when it comes to army votes. It looks like Poroshenko, the army faith language slogan was a little tone deaf. He thought he did build up the army. He has been patriotic. He's been a good wartime president, but that's not enough.
I would probably ask as well the issue of the identity, because on the identity and all these, because I think it's sometimes missed in these days international debates, because it's all about corruption and anti-corruption. Still, we have this candidate who is, bilingual. He is Russian speaker. He's not even bilingual, yet saying that he's aiming to join the European Union, that he's very pro-Western. Still, a lot of debates are about that. He would bring back Ukraine back closer to the Russia.
Well, but I totally agree that it's very. I would say it's humiliating that we actually don't know almost anything about his policies, what he's actually about. And I just read that he's very successful in being silent regarding certain things, and maybe that's one of the reasons of his success, because people can just project their wishes to him. So I think it's a problem that we should decipher their TV shows and these stand-ups to understand what he's actually about, what he's pro and what he's contra, and it's not normal that it's like two weeks to the second tour of election, and we still don't know anything. We don't have clear answers. And as for the NATO, I remember very well, like 10 years ago and 50 years ago, every Ukrainian politician who wished to avoid the NATO policy, the pro-NATO policy, always appealed to the referendum. So it's a very old story.
I should probably add, because also having this discussion here, there is this argument about not having the policies. However, if you really read the interviews and read the program, they are both equally vague, but at the same time, all the issues are somehow there. So is it the part of the campaign to say that there is no policy? Where, you kind of can explain what are the policy on each of the spheres in economy, on the taxes, on the language, on something like that.
Zelensky will not talk to the press. This is a big problem. The fact that he doesn't give interviews, that he travels across the country and does comedy troupes. He did meet with foreign journalists for a short period of time. We sent someone, and all the major papers here sent someone. But he needs to start talking and telling people what he actually wants to do. I have a very basic question. Why is he running? He's rich and famous. What does he want? No one can answer that question.
I was interested in this phenomenon before he became really popular, before the first round, and I was watching these 2 or 3 big interviews which we have now in YouTube, and for me many questions were answered. His ideology, for example, quite libertarian. I am happy that not right. It is I think, a very good sign also for Ukrainian elections. And yeah, he's pleading for free market, for medical insurance, like referendums like in Switzerland, direct democracy, these internet administrations and such things. Maybe it's not enough and not concrete, but I think if you are really, if you are just Ukrainian who wants to decide whom to choose, you can find some answers in these interviews. But a question, what I think it's really important here, is not really politics, but the perception of art or of cultural product in Ukraine. And I'm asking myself all the time, why do the people watch Servant of the People, his TV series, his movies, or his stand-up shows to understand what he wants in politics? I think it's really interesting. And it's connected, I think, with some series of attacks against artists or contemporary art exhibitions where the image which was shown was perceived as a direct, I don't know, propaganda or direct message.
Kind of, as it is, but I just should say that how the people read Zelensky, that's what we, and not just, as well the President Poroshenko, that's in our interviews with the Kyiv residents.
Щось чули про дебати Зеленського і Порошенка?
Ні, не чув.
Ну, звісно, чув.
Ні. Ні? Зовсім. Ви пішли на дебати до НСК Олімпійське?
У будь-якому випадку я б дуже хотів там побувати.
Це якщо це дебати, чим більше глядачів, тим вони краще. Ну, хай би чинний президент відповів на всі питання, які народ ставить. Про Свинарчуків і всі кампанії ці всі.
Ну, думаем, на Олимпийском лучше, чтобы все увидели.
Ну, це мало ймовірно. Від діючого президента вже нічого не очікую. І особисто для мене, на жаль, він не став гарантом Конституції. А від Зеленського він, мабуть, повинен нам дати пояснення, з ким він буде працювати, яка його команда.
Я считаю, что Зеленский, недостойно быть президентом Украины. Как он будет выглядеть на всяких сборищах всех президентов и всех, его никуда не будет приглашать, как и Лукашенко того же. Україна нічого не доб'ється, якщо вибере Зеленського.
А чого взагалі очікуєте від дебатів?
Наверное, больше всего, как будут унижать нашего действующего президента. Есть много очень интересной информации о нем, которую можно обсудить с ним же.
Хто кого передебатує?
Мне кажется, Зеленский, Порошенко.
Да, мне тоже так кажется.
Он человек, как мне кажется, честный, которому в принципе нечего скрыть.
And we also have one of the ladies in this video clip said that, like, I don't know how Zelensky would represent Ukraine in the West with other presidents. Question to all of you, also your thoughts, because a lot of politicians were named in apolitical. By the way, I should also say we don't know who would win so far. Still. How do you think? To what extent this is a question for the people in DC, people in Berlin? You've just been. You talk to a lot of internationals.
I can tell you in Washington, everyone wants to know who Zelensky's team is going to be. A lot of people don't know very much about him. He has not been to Washington yet. We've invited him to come. The Atlantic Council has invited him. We hosted Yulia Tymoshenko before the first round. We would host Petro Poroshenko. We would host either candidate and introduce them. Obviously, the president knows everyone already. We know, some of his inner circle, but like I said before, there's at least 4 circles around Donnie Luke, and we don't. Or I'm sorry, there's 4 circles around Zelensky, and we don't know who he's going to listen to. And that's one of the big concerns: is who's really going to get his ear.
I just don't imagine him. I don't imagine him next to Trump or Merkel or anyone. Maybe behind the doors they would make it, but I mean seriously, in terms of foreign policy, I don't know what to expect.
I would we have a chance, our correspondent has chance very shortly talk to Kurt Volker, who is a special envoy on the Ukraine's negotiation of the State Department.
As I've said before, the U.S. is not in supporting any individual candidates. We support principles. We believe in reform, we believe in fighting corruption, we believe in security, and we're going to work with Ukraine on all of those things, and we want to work with whoever the leadership turns out to be. But I think Ukraine has done more in the past few years than in the past 25, but there's a lot of work that is yet to be done.
But do you see any risks of a comedian becoming a president of Ukraine in times of war?
I think the Ukrainian people need to decide who they want to be their president.
But the United States will be cooperating with anyone who becomes the president, right?
I'm sorry?
The United States will cooperate with any leadership.
We have to. Ukraine's a sovereign country, and it's an important country, and we will work together with Ukraine on all of the issues that we work with Ukraine on today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
And as well, it's in more calmer situation, had a chance to talk to Peter Wagner, who is in the European Commission leading the Ukraine support group.
We are into a long-term relationship in our support to the country, in support of a society and not of individual politicians, of individual events. There is a lot of resilience in Ukraine, which has to be further built in order to stand the aggression. But it is something from which Europe is benefiting, the EU is benefiting, because there is no European EU resilience without having Ukrainian resilience. Commissioner Hahn and others in the European Commission have made it repeatedly clear, and the last time yesterday, that we are into this long-term relationship with Ukraine. And for us it is important that we have now fair and transparent elections also in the second round of the presidential elections, and then later on also, of course, for the parliamentary elections.
And I should just say that we have more comments on our webpage and on hromadske.ua, and follow them on Western politicians, on the Ukrainians. So I know this is a very, so maybe you shortly talked about that. What was your discussion as well with the, I don't know, politicians, the people from outside?
Yeah, it were also scientists who are
researching
Ukraine, and interestingly, they were quite relaxed and rational. The first question was if the cooperation with Western partners is possible afterwards. It is a really important question for them. And the second was a point that for the democracy in this building process or in this development process, it is really important that the presidents are changing, that something new will come. It brings new dynamics, new people in politics, new spirit, and it is good for Ukrainian democracy. That were quite rational and interesting points, and I think it's because our internal identity politics is really our thing. It's our thing to discuss, to negotiate, and to live somehow with each other. But if we look really like cold-blooded, rational on the situation, I think it's really important who will be these people who will come with Zelensky. And if some social lifts will be possible, and if we would have more open politics, more open for new politicians or activists. I think these are crucial questions, and not that he is not funny enough in his stand-up shows.
And still we discussing it in the position that still will be 2 weeks of the campaign, and the chances are there. Oksana, do you see how, where is the strength of Poroshenko that he can kind of catch up?
Well, I don't know. His team made a lot of mistakes. I guess he made a lot of mistakes. Actually, I don't know how it's possible. Maybe it's the crucial change is possible because of Zelensky's mistakes. and he just need to start talking, I guess, to to make it possible. Actually, I don't know, but. Seriously, I'm very much concerned about the future of our democracy if Zelensky wins, because even his attitude to the media is actually disturbing, because he made an appointments with journalists, and he never showed up. He didn't show up to the debates. He talked like, I don't know, 5 or 2 minutes to the press, and you know, these quizzes and ping pong games in his press center. I see it as a huge disrespect to the media, and he's not a president yet. What will we have if he becomes president?
Yesterday, President Poroshenko had met his fierce critique, up to 15-20 anti-corruption and different kind of civil society activists. You can see the photo. They demanded that meeting for very, very long time. Some of them were maybe in better relations with the president, some in very, very bad, and promised that there would be some new things about the Anti-Corruption Bureau, about the Special Prosecutor Office, that there would be the security service of Ukraine won't really follow the economy or economic crimes, which was the issue of often the issue of the misuse. There would be the people who lived in Kherson, and the leadership of Kherson Oblast, where a famous activist had been killed, Katia Mishchenko, should leave. What would we say? Does it bring some kind of hope and trust? Because some people say, like, finally president met these people. The others say, a bit too late.
It's about 5 years too late, Natalia, honestly. I thought that was really interesting. So we had a contributor, Alexander Motel from Rutgers University, and he wrote a piece called How Poroshenko Can Win and Zelensky Can Lose. And he said something very interesting. He said that, we have this idiom in English, he says that Poroshenko needs to roll up his sleeves and become an American-style politician who's shaking hands, kissing babies, and he needs to be real. He needs to try to make an authentic connection with people and let people scream at him, shout at him, tell him all their frustrations for the last 5 years, and try to make a real connection. People perceive Zelensky as real and authentic, and he needs to be more authentic than Zelensky. Even if he does that, I don't think he can catch up. But what we saw yesterday when he met with these anti-corruption activists is an attempt to listen and an attempt to disarm his critics.
Do we trust in that?
Well, I don't know. I don't make any prospects, any political prospects.
Yeah, I think every person can rethink his own politics and try something new. But I would say that he is inspired now by Zelensky and tries a new role of a democratic, more horizontal, again, president. I don't know if he's good in this role. We will see.
He also said, I didn't do everything right. Yesterday, he showed some humility, and he's not known for being very humble. So that's a good sign. I think it's too late, though. I was surprised when I read Daria Kaleniuk, the head of Antac's message, and she seemed to be very hopeful. But look, let's watch and see if he does the things he's promised to do.
Okay, so before the final, I just should use this opportunity to say that this week we are discussing the elections. We would discuss them next week. You have a lot at Hromadske International. Follow our Twitter or Facebook, but I would also urge that you can support Hromadske International with your donations. You can go to our webpage en.hromadske.ua. There you can find this button, donate, and that would be very, very helpful, especially if you finally would like to have a balanced, objective, neutral, and all kind of views, information about Ukrainian politics. Besides that, I would have another promotion, most, let's say, also important, because we don't need to forget about the other things. We just recently published the documentary we've brought from Crimea on the 5 years of the annexation of Crimea, which is called The Price of the Annexation of Crimea is Live. And that's there. We went back to the people we've seen 5 years ago. So you just understand that things are serious in Ukraine. There is a lot to follow. But with final words, probably I would ask you to say, each of you, where are you looking at next week? What are your maybe, not exactly about the just generally presidency, but things you're looking at? What are your concerns? How things could be improved? So where are you focused?
Well, I will just hope that that will be more communications from Poroshenko. Maybe he will make some progress in these steps you mentioned. I hope it could help to mobilize people, for example, who didn't vote during the first round.
Melinda, you've arrived. Of course, it's interesting to talk to Poroshenko, Zelensky, there are the limits. So where are you? What are you up to?
I'm going to be watching who he names as his team, who Zelensky names as his team. That's the big mystery. And it should happen in the next 2 weeks. Obviously, we'll be watching for the debates. We'll be analyzing them. And I hope your readers will also have a look at our blog, which is on the Atlantic Council website.
Yeah, I'm interested how the discussion will be, what will say to each other these still polarized groups who are for Poroshenko or just against Zelensky and vice versa. And the second point is, of course, Zelensky's proposals and new people in his team. It's really interesting.
Natalia, I'll also be watching, I just had a meeting with a really well-known anti-corruption activist before I came here, and he said Zelensky's policies are pretty good. They're not great, so I'm going to be digging in on that while I'm here in Kiev.
Okay, so follow also the Ukraine blog at the Atlantic Council and as well Hromadske. We would have discussions between, parties, but I really liked, thanks a lot for coming, because I really wanted to make this discussion to explain a bit more in depth, not just like yelling at each other, arguing who is better, who worse, but making you understand what's going on in Ukraine. And I would dare to say that despite everything, I really like this campaign compared to all the 20 years before, when we really were like as if that would be the end of the world. Like when you remember Yanukovych time, you remember Orange Revolution. So it's still the real democracy, and I had very happy to see the kind of smiling faces of people watching this election, speaking kind of election observers who say that, that's how the people vote. But all the candidates have to do definitely way more to explain themselves, both to Ukrainians and as well to the world. So it was Oksana Forostyna, a Ukrainian publisher, as well a Ukrainian publisher, and author Katia Mishchenko, and Melinda Haring, editor of UkraineAlert blog at the Atlantic Council, and myself, Natalia Humenyuk. So go again, I'll remind, at Twitter, Facebook, search Hromadske International, sign up for our weekly newsletter at our webpage, and I'll see you in a week in this studio.